So this is Forward Progress. My name is Carlos Walker, and today I have Miss Karima with me. How you doing, Karima?
I am well. I am well. How are you, Carlos?
Enjoying life. So before we jump into this, I want to ask you, if you will, tell the people who you are and what you do.
Okay, so my name is Karima Hanifa. I am justice impacted. I'm a community organizer. I do a lot of boots on the ground work. I do a lot of community outreach work. Yeah.
All right. So before we get into all of the great things that you do, because I do want to make sure that we know all of this. Before you went to prison, matter of fact, how long did you do?
So I was incarcerated for 26 years.
Every time I hear, especially, I'm used to hearing men stories with those numbers, but not women. So, if you will, and I hate to go into the past, but to show the forward progression of everything, I do dig into the past, not fully. Tell me who you were before you went to prison.
I was a 15-year-old rebellious runaway.
Mm. Share a little bit about that story.
Came from a Muslim background, was a foreign exchange student. Just thought that the grass was green on the other side.
You said foreign exchange. Where your where your ethnic roots from?
I'm from Georgia. Well, I was born in Charleston, South Carolina, but I went to boarding school in West Africa when I was 11 years old.
Ah, that's interesting. Tell me a little bit about that because I don't. I know a little bit about the culture, but you done been there.
So for me, as an 11-year-old, it was not the best experience, right? It definitely was not the best experience. And what I did learn later on was that that experience allowed me to have something to reflect on while I was incarcerated. So a lot of times when you're incarcerated for long periods of time, you begin to question your life before incarceration. So like, most people that are incarcerated, especially so young, um, most people never went across the railroad tracks before. So they have no idea like what life is about. A lot of people had never been on a plane before. I mean, this was in the 90s, of course, but now everybody's been on a plane, I'm sure. But it gave me something to reflect on.
Especially when you sit down and you look back, you realize that you had a cultural background that it actually had range to it. Instead
Yes.
of, like you said, some people ain't. You even still got people today who have never really left outside of their community.
Right.
I was having a conversation with some people from out of Chicago,
Mhm.
and the guy that I was speaking to, he have been outside because he's in the military. But to your point, it's some people that haven't moved outside of this one little strip, outside of going to school because they do go to school together. But that's where they reside at. They ain't even been to the museums and the things that's outside of their block.
Right.
I keep having to take this off because my battery didn't died on me. But
It's okay. I got a little static on this side, but it seems like it's gone now. We're fine.
okay, it might have been that.
Okay.
But share a little bit more about your background, if you will, before prison.
So I grew up in Islamic private school. I went to the Sister Clara Muhammad schools. And then after I lived in West Africa, when I came back, I was placed in public school. So I went through like the peer pressure phase where people would like ask me, "Where are you from?" And I would be like, "I'm from here." But well, what school did you go to? I went to school in Africa. Oh, you an African booty scratcher. That was a joke back in the day. So I dealt with that, and it was like a culture shock though, from private school to living overseas to coming back here to public school. And then I think like I was influenced by, just people who didn't live the same lifestyle as myself. And I really believed that like the grass was greener on the other side. I believe that.
Hmm. So, what did you start doing at the age of 15 that made you
Oh
start
goodness.
seeing greener grass?
I started running away from home. I started shoplifting, had a little boyfriend, which was really a grown man. I just like you know, when you run away from home, there are just so many things that I think young people sacrifice for somewhere to lay their head. And I was one of those young people. And I ran away from home, not because like my life was miserable. Like I ran away from home because I thought that the people in the streets, the people that received welfare, the people who, like back in the day, if you had government assistance, like you got a new pair of shoes at the beginning of every month because your mama got a check. You got food stamps. You always had snacks. I had to be in the house when the street lights came on. Other kids did not. Um, my mother did like allow me to go to the skating ring and things like that, but I still felt like the people in the streets was having more fun than me.
I understand where you're coming from. It's when you said thinking that the grass is green, I got a little niece that is dealing with sort of kind of the same issue. Her mother has structure, and the other parents, not that they may not have some structure, but they're not as structured as my sister is, and she thinks that their freedom is better than what she has, not realizing that structure sets you up for success.
That is
Discipline sets
correct.
you up for success. And while, kind of to your point, you think that the freedom is freedom.
Right.
And the
And it's
freedom
not
ain't.
because my mother said to me when I was a kid that there are rules everywhere, right?
Mm.
You will follow my rules or you will follow the rules in the streets. But my situation was worse because I had to follow the rules of the Georgia Department of Corrections for 26 years. Yeah.
Being one who has served 13, I understand those rules. And being a rule breaker or one who wants to do what he wants to do, I totally understand. How old were you when you actually got incarcerated?
15.
Oh, so you was 15 when you actually got the sentence.
I was 15 when I got incarcerated in Georgia. Um, Fulton County waited until I was 18 to actually take me to trial. So I was in juvenile for 2 years, and on my 17th birthday, I was transferred to the county jail where I was for another year before I went to trial.
Okay, so we're gonna go into the psychological part. How did it feel when you got in trouble? If you don't mind, do you mind sharing what transpired?
Which part? What are you asking me?
Uh,
Like, what did
when
I go
you
to
got
prison for?
incarcerated? Yeah, what you got
So
incarcerated for?
I was arrested for murder and kidnapping.
Okay.
I almost said armed robbery, and it don't have nothing to do with my case. I don't know where my brain just went. That's crazy. I was looking up like, huh, what, huh? Yeah. I'm sorry. Murder and kidnapping at 15.
Okay, and we're not gonna go into the details of everything, but when sitting in there, when you first got incarcerated, how
Hmm.
did at the age of 15? What did do you remember that emotional standpoint of what it felt like?
I remember being locked up like 3 days, and they kept me in lockdown my first 3 days. Because then, like, people that were in juvenile were locked up for shoplifting, truancy, you know, like just things that kids do. But I had a serious violent offense. And so they kept me locked in a room for 3 days. And I remember like hallucinating on that third day. Like, I don't know what was happening, but it was not real. Literally, like the walls were closing in on me. Like, I felt like I was hearing things and seeing things that were not there. And it was like just a psychological breakdown. Like, it's hard to explain. Like, how do you go from being free in the city of Atlanta as a runaway, so doing what I want to do and going where I want to go, to being confined to a cell?
Did you have a co-defendant or were you alone?
I have 8 co-defendants,
Oh, so kind of getting in the midst of the wrong crowd
and
and
they are
being,
all adults. All of my co-defendants are adults. I was the only juvenile. So I never saw any of them until we went to court,
and you were only 15.
and I was 15.
I guess this
And
is more.
five of them are still incarcerated.
Hmm. So, emotional standpoint, we'll move forward to the between 15 and 18. You were
So
having to deal. Oh, go ahead.
I knew that I was in jail for doing something wrong, but I don't think at 15 that it didn't click, right? It wasn't, my frontal lobe wasn't developed, and I wasn't getting it. I don't know if I thought I was locked up for shoplifting, or I don't know, like not for because somebody lost their life. Like at 15, I didn't understand that. I understood that somebody died and that I was in trouble, but I didn't understand like the consequences. Neither did I understand like that there are some things that happen that we cannot undo. I didn't understand that at 15. I remember feeling like I had gotten myself into a situation that my mother could not get me out of. And I had never been arrested before, and I had never been in trouble before. So I literally thought, like, something happens in the neighborhood or something happens at school, you call your mama come get you. No, that was not the case.
She couldn't do nothing.
She couldn't do anything for me. And in my youth, like, I thought my mother was like the enemy. I thought like I was the smartest person in the world and she was the stupidest person in the world, right? Like I thought I had all the sense in the world. And she was telling me and warning me. And guess what? Everything she said was right and everything I thought was wrong. Yes, my mother was right about everything. My mama's still right. Everything she said me, she's right. Yes.
I'm excited for this. Look, I hate that you had to go through, but I'm glad that you are the person that you are today. And you wouldn't be this person had you not been through the past. As much as we may hate the past, hate that people go through,
Right.
I wouldn't be meeting the beautiful person that I'm meeting now.
I agree. And I
I
wouldn't
would,
be doing the work that I'm doing either.
good God, it's because it's personal. This is it makes you want to. You're living life purposeful,
Yes.
where most people are just the majority of people are just existing right now. But your life ain't a life of existence. Your life is a life of purpose, literally.
Mhm.
And that's the mind blowing part when you really truly get to see and understand how God really uses whatever your background is
Mhm.
to create your future. So, like I told you, my niece, she's actually going through some things similar. Think that her mother is the enemy. Thinking that her mother had no sense or have no sense. Mother
Mhm.
hasn't been through what she's going through. This is true, but she's seen me go through. I felt the same way you felt. I had older parents, so they were strict
Mhm.
in the whole nine. So I have an understanding of where she's at, but my sister do because she heard me say some things, heard me move and do some things. But to you, 15, 15 to 18, what was life like sitting in there?
I
Because
went
you
to
ain't even been charged yet. I mean, you've been charged, but you hadn't even been sentenced. You just
That
said,
is correct. So I went to school, like in the state of Georgia. If you're underage, you have to go to school every single day. And there was a school inside of juvenile, and I went to school every day. Yeah.
did you get your diploma or GED while you was in school then, or
I got it as soon as I got to prison. Like at 18, I got my GED.
okay, all right. So 18, they sentenced you.
Mhm.
What did they sentence you to?
2 consecutive life sentences.
Georgia, no parole or parole?
Parole after 20 years.
Okay.
But at that
Uh,
time, I did not know that. If you got 2 life sentences, which ends in 88888, and you have not one but two 88888s, right? And they are running consecutive, not concurrent, but consecutive. I believe that I would never get out.
you looking at 40 years in your mind when you actually are able to go up for parole because there are two consecutive life sentences, and
Yes,
20 is for the one,
yes,
not the second one.
yes. And it's crazy because in Georgia, when I got sentenced, life was 7 years. So wait, because I want to be clear. Life was 7 years in Georgia that you're eligible for parole when I got sentenced. But because I had 2 consecutive, they wanted 20 years before I was under consideration.
Okay.
But they don't tell you that. You literally get a piece of paper and it says parole eligibility date and it says 8, which is like the sign eights, like the figure eight. What do they call that? And
No, I got you. Figure eight.
in like ohm.
Infinity.
Infinity. That is correct. Yes.
So you done got your time. What ran through your mind? What was there?
I ain't gonna never get out. I'm gonna be here for the rest of my life. And I just was hopeless. I was on mental health medication real heavy. I remember being on mental health meds and being so medicated. Like one morning, this officer said good morning to me, and it was like 5 minutes later, I answered him. And then I realized at that moment that I was under too much medication. And I was just like trying to replace um one drug for another drug because I used to smoke weed on the streets. And so the medication that they had me on made me feel like I had smoked weed. So like I had came up with the symptoms and everything to get this specific medication, but they had me on so much medication that I could not even function. It's like I was a zombie.
It's amazing what we can actually do when we want to do it, right? The things that, because you say you came up with all of the symptoms to actually get it. This shows how powerful the mind and how smart you were, even at a younger age, because you figured out how to get the symptoms to make them give you the medicine that you want. I mean, yeah, to make them give you the medicine that you actually wanted.
Yes.
To get away from the world.
Yes. As a coping mechanism.
And pretty much that is what your story resonates with a lot of youth. Just by listening to what I'm listening to now, I see how people actually try, not just youth, but adults. They try to run away from having to deal with emotions because either they're hurt or, for me, I used to smoke a lot of weed. I have an addictive nature, and my addictive nature for me overcrowds what I should be doing or how I should be handling anything. So I don't know how to take it easy on anything. But for you, it was different. It was pain. I'm trying to keep from thinking about where I'm at. So this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. When it did come click and you got this epiphany that this ain't the way that you should move at the age of 18, what happened?
So then I had to just I don't think I came off the medication at 18. It may have been like 19, but it was like immediately after I got there, right? That I just was like, oh, this is too much. And then I was trying to figure out like what should I do? What should I do? How can I handle myself? How can I do this time? And I still was like in denial, walking around the prison with my pants hanging off my butt, thinking I'm a thug. Like I went through all the little phases, all the little stages. And then like I want to say it was like 20 years, no, it was 10 years in. I had a session with my counselor. And like in the prison system, they have like monthly sessions or like sessions every 90 days. So I had my session with the counselor, and she asked me, "What are you gonna do when you get out?" And I started crying. I said, "Get out? I ain't never getting out." And she was like, "Yes, you are." And she turned the computer around to me and showed me that I had a parole date 10 years later. This when I found out that I was eligible. Prior to that, I did not even know. I'm a kid, I'm young, and I'm on mental health meds. I don't know what's going on around me. I really believe that I'm never getting out. So after that, I started like just trying to figure things out. I remember getting transferred not too long after that. And I remember going to a new women's prison, and all my people that knew me was like pulling up on me because they thought they knew me, right? They was like pulling up on me, handing me packs, and what people do when you come through, like, what you need, I got you. And I decided on that van to that next prison that, hey, I could be anybody I want to be. Literally, there was like a shift. I was like, I could be anybody I want to be. And I decided that I was not going to a new prison with old behavior. But when I got there, the staff was waiting on me because they had heard about me. So they expecting a certain person. So they treating me a certain way. And I'm like humbling myself. I'm like crying, like, you don't even know who I am, bro. You don't even know who I am. This is what I'm telling myself. You don't even know who I am. Like, I don't go for this. I've been locked up all these years. But I decided, I made a conscious decision, like, I didn't want to be who I used to be. So when I got to that new institution, there was an Islamic community that was there that didn't have any leadership. And that gave me an opportunity to step into leadership, to lead the Islamic community as someone who was born and raised Muslim in an institution with many people who had reverted while they were incarcerated.
It gave you purpose.
Yes, it definitely gave me purpose.
One, I want to thank God for the lady who shifted the shifted and showed you that you who asked the question.
Yes, yes.
What did you want to do when you left prison? She gave you hope.
Hmm.
And what I realized is that is a place that lacks hope.
Yes,
It's only when you find there's a book by Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, one of my
yes,
favorite books,
yes.
man.
Mine's too.
Man, one of my favorite books. I read this book and then I can't even remember half the book. I'm gonna go
Right.
back and read it again now. But what I did learn is that that man was sitting in the Holocaust and he was in pure hell. And he had to find what deep within inside, go deep inside and find just the inch of hope that changed his whole perspective of life.
Mhm.
And that inch of hope, that little glimpse of light, was enough light for you to ride on that bus and say to yourself, my life ain't gonna be what it used to be. I have
Right.
the I have the ability to write my own story now. And you became, I know the men or imams, what would the female, I guess, pastor or preacher, or what are they called?
So we don't really have Islamic leaders, but like I just was the Islamic leader.
Okay.
Yeah,
And you, well, technically an imam.
yeah,
I mean, yeah, you the speaker.
yeah. That is correct.
I just thought maybe it had a word for it, but
No, it doesn't.
you became that glimpse of hope not just for yourself, but for others.
That is correct.
Tell me some of the things that you did while you were sitting in there in your second life to uplift the females, the people who was there, even the guards.
So for the other ladies that was there, like I made sure that we always had access to Juma, and that we always had access to Islamic studies. God had like given me favor with every warden, right? So I had access to those in leadership to tell them like, hey, this is what we need. We always, we got our feast after Ramadan. They made sure we had our hijabs. They made sure we had what we needed. They made sure that we were being respected while we were worshiping. I started creating like programming on the inside. I created something called Big Sister, Little Sister, which was like the older prisoners mentoring the younger ladies that were coming in. So we would help them with their homework. I created something called Senior Citizen Day, where the prisoners that were 50 years or 60 years and older, we would take them to the gym once a month and show them old movies like Cocoon, and give them popcorn and let them crochet. Crochet needles was not really allowed in the women's prison. So we would let them crochet. I opened up the faith and character based dorm in the state of Georgia. So it was a pilot program. I helped facilitate that. What else? I helped facilitate Life University's Shalom project coming into the women's prison. That was later on in my sentence. They took the college programming out of the Georgia penal system in 1996, and they did not bring it back until they started talking about it in 2013, and it finally hit back in 2015. So I helped to bring that in and to be one of the first cohorts, one of the first graduates as well. Um, Something that I did to uplift myself that I like to share with people. I think I have been locked up like 15. Let me see. Let me do the math. So I'll tell the story like this. The last 8 years of my sentence, I fasted like Ramadan every other day for 8 years. So let me tell you the story. It was my birthday. I was depressed. I was ready to get out of prison. I had been trying to get out of prison, writing a parole board, ask people to write for me, trying to get a lawyer, trying to get a habeas corpus, just like anything to like have some quality of life outside of there. So my mother came to see me for my birthday, and I told her, fast with me. She said, fast with you? She said, you sounding like them Christians. Listen, you got to fast for yourself. You know, like how the churches will do like a fast, you know, like she was like, you have to fast for yourself. I was like, you won't fast with me? She said, you can't depend on me to fast with you. She said, you can only depend on you. You got to fast and pray. So for 8 years, I fast and prayed from sunrise to sunset. Absolute. No food, no drink. It wasn't always easy, but it allowed me to mature spiritually, emotionally, mentally, and physically. Because in Islam, if you're fasting but you backbiting, you just starving yourself. If you fasting but you being hateful to people, you're just starving yourself.
Same thing. Well,
You
for
are
Christians, it's the same thing.
okay. And so what I understood was that in that instant,
So you were saying that she told you y'all was not going. You were gonna have to fast on your own.
yes, do not depend on other people to fast with me, that I needed to fast for myself and with myself. And so I made a commitment that I was going to fast. Desperation, I was going to fast every other day until I get released. Well, I did not know. Absolute fast. No food, no drink from sunrise to sunset. I did not know that it was going to be 8 whole years. I didn't know that. I was just desperate. But you know, when you make a promise to God, like you can't break that promise because God don't break his promises to us.
Preach.
So, you know, while I was fasting, it helped me to grow emotionally, spiritually, mentally, as well as physically. Because, you know, for one, like they say intermediate fasting, right? Like helps you physically. It helped me emotionally because it helps me to accelerate emotionally. It helped me spiritually because there's no way that you can say that you're fasting and you being nasty to people, you backbiting people, you being hate, you know, you just being hateful for no reason. You're just starving yourself. So literally, I had to make all 5 prayers every single day on time. Be kind to people, feed people, not gossip about people. I like to talk about people too. Oh, I got a problem. But I had to learn to guard my mouth, to guard my heart, and to guard my ears, you know? And so I was on this traveling choir that used to go out into the community where we could meet like the governor, the commissioner, like I done met everybody. Ambassador Andrew Young, Ben Carson, the man that just died, Carter, President Carter. Like I got pictures with these people while I'm incarcerated. So I would be out in community and I would be fasting. They would be serving steak and shrimp and just all this food, and I could not eat it. I'd be sitting there crying, and the people be like, "Why you crying?" And then they'd be like, "You so strong," and I'd be crying because I'd be like, "Lord, I want this food. I've been locked up all these years." But I stuck with it. Listen, one time this little boy asked me, he said, "Can I have your food?" I said, "Mm-hmm." That little boy started eating my food. I started crying. I was like, Lord, I can't believe I got this whole plate of free world food in front of me and I can't even taste it. But God honored that fast because guess what? He brought me out of the belly of the beast. And he brought me out sane. He brought me out with a purpose. He brought me out with love in my spirit, in my heart. I don't hate people. I don't hate on people. I'm not a gatekeeper. I love my community. I love my people, right? Like I love my people. Yes. Come, please come. I love my people. So I believe that God gave me those gifts because I took 8 years to just be with him. Yeah.
As you said, God is faithful.
Yes, he
And
is.
when you he's faithful when we ain't even faithful.
That's true.
But when we decide to align ourselves, what happens is he honors us.
Yes. Yes.
Really, so he can be honored. But
Yes.
he shows favor. But just hearing your story, I hear a Joseph story. I love Joseph.
I love the story of Joseph as well. It's in the
But
Quran. I love it.
I see you when I hear the story of Joseph in my mind. Because you told me you had favor with wardens.
I did.
You had favor not just with wardens, with people. And God allowed people to meet you, not you to meet people. I used to say, use the terminology, I'm meeting such and such. I'm meeting such and such. One day, a guy stopped me and told me, no, that's you in the picture. And I was like, nah, look, I met such and such. He was like, nah, that's you in the picture. And I shut up because I realized I need to listen. And when I shut up, he said, no, that person met you. So what I'm telling you is that they met you. President Jimmy Carter would have never met you had not God put you where you need to be for him to meet you. Because you already knew about him. He got to meet a great being before he left here. Because God saw fit to honor you for being obedient. And I'm grateful to, one, have met you during that day we met, to be able to do this, because this right here, it means the world to me. And this to me is probably the best one I've done. Because I've done a few women, great men. But to understand your story, and probably because I also resonate with it because of my niece as well. And you are a phenomenal person who is doing the work, because you are also still being obedient to God about what you have promised God that you would do when you stepped home.
Yes, yes,
Now, we're about to move into the forward progress, which you had already issued some of the progress forward, but now since you've been home, share some of the work that you do now.
okay. So before I go there, I want to say this. When I was incarcerated, I was laying in the dark. And I always tell people this. When you are locked up, I don't care what you show the compound. When you close your eyes at night, it's just you by yourself. You got to deal with you. Or you could say it's you and God. But when you close your eyes, your home girl, your home boy, the hype, the crunk, none of that does not exist. It's just you. That's why people stick their head up under the covers, because it's just them. You understand? So one night I was laying in the dark and I told God, I said, God, if I ever get out of this, I would never forget about my people. Right?
Mm.
I would not forget about my people, and I would be the voice for the voiceless. Now I didn't know how that door was going, how this pathway was going to happen, right? But God would align every single step from the moment I was released to me doing the TED Talk 4 months after I came. Let me see, April, May, June, July, August. 4 months after I came home to teaching at the high school in Atlanta as an independent contractor, to becoming a community organizer, to doubling back while I'm a community organizer to mentor the youth in community, to the rights restoration work that I'm doing here in the state of Georgia. So for me, advocacy is about being a voice for the voiceless. So in Georgia, it's so many people that's incarcerated whose families they've exhausted themselves. They don't have no more money. They don't have no more money for lawyers, money for store, money for packages. They don't have money to go get people to speak in their loved ones' favor. They just tired. People's grandmothers and mothers have raised 2 and 3 generations of kids, and people are just tired. Well, I feel like God put it in my spirit and on my heart to advocate for those women specifically that are incarcerated, that are living lives of people of repentance, right? Have asked God for forgiveness and have forgiven themselves. And another one of my prayers that I'm waiting on God to answer is like, I would like to be an advocate working with the parole board to help people come home. That's what I want to do. And in every step of my life, I live my life as an example for others, because I want people to see that as someone that was sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences and told she would never be released, to someone who not only was told that she would never be released, but there's a negative stigma on people's heads who have been incarcerated, who was
Come on.
also incarcerated as a child, right? Who now has come home and is showing the world that it is possible, that we are resilient, that we can bounce back, that we love God, that we love community, that we are nurturers, that we are caretakers, that we are advocates, right? And that I feel like somebody asked me, I was on a panel on yesterday, and someone asked me, I was so nervous. And this lady, she said, you said you've been doing this for 5 years. I said, yes. She said, what, 5 years? She said, and you're still nervous? And I said to her, I am nervous because I represent every woman
Mm.
in the state of Georgia. And I don't want to misspeak or misstep or do anything that could harm my people. I don't want to go back because people will say, there is no redemption. There is no successful reentry. It can't be done. It's impossible, right? And I always tell people, if I could do it, you could do it.
I
I got a
promise.
friend that just did 36 years in prison, just came home. I drove an hour and 40 minutes to go hold her hand and let her know, sis, you gonna be all right. If I could do it, you could do it, right? And I'm here for you. And what do you need from me? And I also dream for a day when I can find funding to walk ladies through the reentry process. Like even if I got to hold their hand, could you imagine spending more of your life in prison than you did free?
Mm-hmm.
You're looking at it.
Not just you. I've met people who one of I haven't seen him since he's been home, but he did over 40 some years.
But just what I say, can you imagine? Not that it's not possible.
No,
I'm
no,
living it. It's me.
no.
That's my story. And
This
you
is
know
your.
what somebody said to me one day? They said, when someone said to me when I was in prison, when you've been locked up longer than you've been free, who are you? And it took me back. I was like, oh my God, what?
I
When
know
they
who you are.
doing, I know who I am, right?
A
When they
warrior,
asked me that question, it
and
just
it
took
was
me to a
mind
loop.
blowing.
I was like, what? Like, huh? Did you
It
just
was
say
mi-
that to me?
it was mind blowing.
It was thought provoking. But I know who I am. And something else that I wanted to share is people say that there are two important days in your life.
The
People
day you
say
were born. What
people
day?
say it's the day you was born and the day you die.
That's what I was about to say. They
Two,
say.
the two most important days of your life are the day you find out what your purpose is
Mm,
and the day you decide to live and walk in that purpose. Those are the two most important days of your life.
that's your rebirth. That's when you are reborn.
Yes, yes, yes. There are so many people wandering aimlessly. You got to find out what your purpose is. And it's not we all have the potential to be millionaires and geniuses, but that's not everybody's purpose. Some of
There's
us
something bigger than
are
that.
some of us are here to give love. Some of us are here to receive love. Some of us are here to be encouraged. Some of us are here to be encouragers. You know, when I thought about my struggles, my incarceration, there was a point in my incarceration where I said, you know what? This is no longer for me. Somebody is watching me. Somebody's trying to figure out how to get through being sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences. And they looking at me to see what is she doing and how is she getting through. You understand? So we got to stop. And another perspective for me, when I was incarcerated, after all them years of being incarcerated and coming up for parole and being denied and denied, I felt like they were janking my chain. One day I said, I no longer see myself as being punished. You know, I would say, the parole board is dragging me. They dragging me. They dragging me. They dragging me. And then one day I said, I'm not being punished. I'm being prepared.
God, look, good God.
Hold
That's
on.
what
Hold on. And then I said, I have forgiven myself and God has forgiven me. And you no longer look at it as a punishment, but that God is lining you up for something greater. And I'm telling you today, I knew then, but I know for sure now that God was just lining me up. He was just preparing me for the work I needed to do. Go
I
ahead,
like.
bro.
I like to tell everybody that when a baby is being developed in the stomach, prison was us being developed in the stomach. But while that baby is being developed, what the parent does is set up the room for the child. Then already got a bunch of stuff ready and waiting to change Pampers, to put them to sleep. Got a whole room set up. And this is what God was doing for us. While we were being developed and shaped in our womb, what God was doing was setting everything else up for us to come to be arrived into this to do what we are called to do now. And that's
Yes.
what you just described, just right there.
Yes.
Now, I want you to share the work you do now.
So the work I do now is the work I just described, the outreach work. I pass out 500 coats and hats and gloves and 500 more tents and boxes of food and providing affordable health care in marginalized communities and the rights restoration piece, which is, trying to get voting rights back for individuals. It's 266,000 people in the state of Georgia that are currently on probation and parole and can't vote. Now, we ain't going to address the elephant in the room. There's somebody getting ready to run for president that got the exact same status, but we're going to say that for later.
Hey, we just realized something. We can run for president.
Can we? Are we regular people?
Look,
Do you know what the catch-22 is on that?
talk to me. He didn't have it beforehand.
In the state of New York, with unless it's a federal conviction, you don't lose the right to vote. And if you can vote, you can run for president. There are different laws in different states.
Well, we gonna make it work for us.
Definitely.
Look, I like to say, I might run for president in the future.
And I come vote for you. Let me know where I need to be living at. I come vote for you.
Look,
yes,
but
yes.
What I do want to do before we go, I want you to do one thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
If there was anything that you could tell somebody who's young, somebody who's old, somebody who's in prison, somebody who's out of prison, a word of encouragement to set them on fire, what would it be?
Never give up. And it would be literally, and I have a film I'm working on that's getting ready to come out. You ready? You can utilize journaling and affirmations to change the trajectory of your life.
I promise you.
Just because you're there don't mean you got to be there forever.
I promise you. Just because you said that, I'm going to tell you a quick story.
Okay.
15 times a day for a year and a half, I ended up reading the Bible. I read As a Man Think and Grow Rich. And then I did read a bunch of other books, but these are the books that really changed the trajectory of my mind. Mm-hmm. And I realized that all of them spoke about changing the subconscious of your mind. And what I started doing for 15 times a day for a year and a half, I spoke 3 things I heard God speak to me. I was leaving prison early, the world would see my artwork, and that I was a millionaire. And I said this over and over again till it literally dug so deep down in my spirit. And I didn't know how any of it was going to come to pass. My mother started telling me, she told me for 4.5 years, pack your bags. I'd never done it because I thought she was crazy, I promise you. But one day I heard God say, try. I packed my bags up, and one day for 3 months, I walked to the R&D door, and I would look out the window and imagine myself in my mind leaving. And I left 6 months to a year later. I left prison. But then the rest of my journey took shape. And everything that I just told you that I spoke to myself, I've seen 2 of the 3 things happen. The third one is happening, but it's not for me. It's for a bunch of people, yes, to see what we can do, being people who have been formerly incarcerated, but it's also for me to pour it back into the community and watch us grow even bigger.
It's real, Carlos. It's real. I have journals where I literally planned my life, and everything that I wrote out, with the exception of one thing that I'm holding on for God.
It's going to happen. Look, me and you going to start praying. I'm going to make sure I call you, and me and you going to pray over this. But we're going to watch it happen together.
Yes.
You are amazing. God knows how to create people, man. I couldn't make this up if I wanted to. I am more than honored to have just been in your presence. God knows how to create angels, and you are an angel for people who have been in prison. When you became divorced and you decided to, there's to be chosen, you have to make a choice, and you made the choice to be chosen. And that's when God decided to say, you know what? I already knew what I had for you. I just needed you to step up and be what I had for you, and you're doing that now. Look, I love you, and I thank you for this. I will be sending this to you after I separate a few things.
Yes, sir.
But hey, keep being great, and we're gonna keep building together.
Definitely. And thank you for this opportunity to be on your platform.
Hey, when you meet great people, greatness sees greatness, and ain't no way I could have passed this one up. Not in a million years. I promise you. Hold
Amazing.
on. Don't hang. I mean, don't you get off. But
Okay.
we're gonna close out. So
Okay.
this is Forward Progress, and this is Miss Karima, and my name is Carlos Walker.